Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Amlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malachei Amlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Angels have come, and they've gotten excited because the family's here, and now the angels are moving from home to home to home across our network and beyond. But we're still singing. L'chuna Ranana is on page number 11, a psalm literally, come on, let's all sing together. L'chuna Ranana on page number 11 in the Siddur. L'chuna Ranana l'Adonai, Nari aletzor yishenu, Nikad mafana b'torah, Bizmiro nari alo, Nikad mafana b'torah, Bizmiro nari alo, Ki el gadol Adonai, umelech gadol, al kol Elohim, asher be'ado mechkerei aretz, v'toafot harim lo, asher be'ado mechkerei aretz, v'toafot harim lo. On the English side, the last stanza, then on to page 12. Come then, let us bow and kneel. Let us bend our knees in the presence of Adonai, who formed us. For Adonai is our God, and we are God's flock, sheep in God's caring hands. If only you would listen today to God's voice and not become hard-hearted like the people at Merivah, like that time at Massah in the desert, when your ancestors tried me and tested me, though they had seen what I had wrought. For 40 years I was troubled by that generation, and I said, these are a people whose hearts have gone astray. They do not know my way. So in anger I swore they would not enter my rest. Merivah and Massah is the nickname of the place where the people of Israel rejected the report of the scouts. The scouts had come back and said, we can go into the land, it's a beautiful land. And the people were afraid. And they had said at one point, number one, let's execute Moses. And number two, let's go back to Egypt. Don't ever tell God you want to go back to Egypt. God worked really hard to get us out of Egypt. And because of that, the people wandered for the next 38 and a half years. They'd already been out for about a year or so, round numbers 40 years. So they're hard-hearted. And it strikes me tonight as we're thinking about family and community, what they really did was they turned their back on the opportunity of walking together. Because some were scared, and then these were unsettled, and these had no sense of hope, and these had no faith, and these did not want to be part of a community. They turned their back on being a shared community and walking together. And that's why they were hard-hearted. And so they weren't able to live in a place together. They didn't live in Israel, they had to leave. And that's a lesson for all of us. We need to embrace all the elements of who we are as a nation, as a community, and learn how to walk together. We may not always agree, but we can walk together. The evening Friday service is really comprised of a number of psalms. And so now we're turning to another psalm that's on the song sheet. It's labeled number 1, Essa Einai on the song sheet, Essa Einai, which means I'm going to lift my eyes up. I'm going to take hold of a new view, a new vantage point, a new perspective, Essa Einai.
window opens wide. I take a chance, move closer. I take a look outside. I lift my eyes, I'm searching from inside, exposing no place to hide. Like shadows in the darkness, reflecting in the night, like dances on a mirror. I cannot hold the light. I lift my eyes, I'm searching to know wrong, do right, and my lips recite. My days become a lifetime. My life becomes a daze. The path I once chose clearly now feels like a maze. Searching for an answer to the mountains I gaze, and I'm singing your praise.
Echoing that sense of looking to the mountains. On page number 14, Yismechu Hashamayim, found in the Hebrew, the English, and the translation. Yismechu Hashamayim, the heavens themselves are also singing. They're rejoicing every single day. Even nature itself calls out to God. Yismechu Hashamayim, it's the last stanza on page 14. Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yeramayam, 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 Umala. Yeramayam, 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 Umalo. Yeramayam, 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 Umalo. Yeramayam, 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 Umalo, Yesmechu Hashamayim, Yesmechu Hashamayim, Yesmechu Hashamayim, V'tagel haaretz. The translation: the heavens shall be glad and the earth rejoice, the sea and its fullness roar. The meadows and all that grows in them exult. Even the trees of the forest shall sing praise, as Adonai comes to judge the earth, judging lands with righteousness and peoples with divine truth. And on page 21, Mizmor David, a Psalm of David on page 21. Mizmor David, Havul Adonai b'nei Elim, Havul Adonai kavod ba'oz, Havul Adonai kavod shemo, Hishtachavul Adonai b'adrat kodesh. Kol Adonai al hamoyim, el hakavod hirim, Adonai amayim rabim. Kol Adonai ba'koach, Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, Vaishaber Adonai et arsei halvanon, Vayarkidem k'mo egel, Lebanon v'Sirion, k'mo ben Reimim. Kol Adonai chotzev lavotesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yechol el ayalot. Vayechesof Ya'arot, Uvechalo Kulo Amer Kavod, Adonai Lamabul Yashav, Vayeshev Adonai Melech Leolam, Adonai Oz Le'amo Yiten, Adonai Yevarech et Amo V'Shalom. L'Charedi on page 23, the first two stanzas, excuse me, and then the last two stanzas on page 25. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmiyanu el hamyuchad, Adonai echad, Shmo echad, l'shem tiferet v'lit hila, lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Likrat Shabbat lechuven elcha, Ki mekor habracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'machashava techila, lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Yamin usmol tifrotzi, ve'et Adonai Taritzi, al yad ish ben partsim, v'nismecha v'nagila, lecha dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat Boi v'shalom ateret bala, Gam b'simcha u'b'tzala, toch emunei am segula, bo'ichala, lecha dodi likrot kala, p'nei Shabbat nikabelon. And we were seated. We've just greeted Shabbat. And Shabbat is poetically presented in the Charodim, which is a song, as a queen, a bride. The Charodi is a song. It's a poem. And the Charodi is a fairly new piece. She's only 500 years old. It's a song, a poem. Turning to page 27, we have the Psalm for Shabbat, which is 3,000 years old. And it's from the days of the Bible, of course, and it's identified with Shabbat. So you might say that Shabbos is the nickname for this psalm, when the psalm nicknames Shabbos. And as we go through this in the English, notice, of what are we speaking from the days of the Bible? Not a bride and not a queen, but something else, or some things else. It is good to thank you, Adonai, and sing to your name, Most High, to proclaim your love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night. Finger the lute, pluck the harp, let the sound of the lyre rise up. You gladdened me with your deeds, Adonai, and I shall sing of your handiwork. How wonderful your works, Adonai, how subtle your designs. The arrogant do not understand, the fool does not comprehend this. The wicked flourish like grass, and every evildoer blossoms, only to be destroyed forever. But you, Adonai, are exalted for all time. Surely your enemies, Adonai, surely your enemies will perish. All who commit evil will be scattered. As a wild bull raises up its horn, you raised my head high, anointed it with fresh oil. As my enemies gather against me, my gaze remains steady, for my ears listen and hear. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon, planted in the house of Adonai. They flourish in our God's courtyards. In old age they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming, Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no flaw. It's the Psalm for Shabbat. Does the Psalm mention lighting candles? Holding a glass of wine for Kiddush? No. Eating challah? No. It talks about thankfulness and being a good and righteous person and being aware of the world and doing everything we can to eliminate evil and wickedness and to bring holiness and integrity into life. That's the nickname for Shabbat from the Psalms 3,000 years ago. We rise the Borchu on page 39a. Baruch hu et Adonai Amavorach. Baruch Adonai Amavorach Le'olam Va'ed. And we are seated. The first bracha on page 39a, the official bracha leading into the evening service, page 39a on the English side. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, whose word brings the evening dusk, whose wisdom opens the gates of dawn, whose understanding changes the day's division, whose will sets the succession of seasons and arranges the stars in their places in the sky, who creates day and night, who rolls light before darkness and darkness from light, who makes day pass into night, who distinguishes day from night. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Living and ever-present God, may your rule be with us forever and ever. Baruch atah Adonai, who brings each evening's dusk. Hil chai v'kayam, tamid yimlocha le'olam voed. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim. On page number 40, this is the bracha that introduces us to the Shema. Tonight, something a little bit different. On the English side, page 40, the last two lines with the little red arrow, and then we'll turn to the song sheet. Simon, are you joining us for the Shema and V'ahavta tonight? Come on up, come on up. So the last two lines on page number 40, please, on the English side, and then the song. Do not ever withdraw your love from us, Baruch atah Adonai, who loves the people of Israel. And now on the song sheet, Love Your God, it's entitled number 3. It's a mistake, it's number 2. But Love Your God on the song sheet. Love Your God on the song sheet. Just
love your God with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your soul. Love your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. Where you live, where you lie, where you stumble, where you thrive, with all you speak, with all you know, with all your soul. Be like God, one like God, in love and life. Be like God, love like God, with all your heart, with all your might, with all your soul. When you seek, when you soar, when you breathe and breathe no more, love your God, be with God, go with God. Be with God, one like God, go with God.
thought. You're Billy and Marilyn's great-grandson, right? Which means great-grandson. Which means you're Harrison and his great, right? Great. You're the great-grandson of the synagogue's founding president. And in a minute, sister as well, going to be up on the bima. great-great-great-grandchildren in the synagogue on the occasion of some of the families, Yortzites, leading the Shema. That takes us back to our origins as a congregation. Great-great-great-grandchild. And of course, the Shema takes it back 3,000 years. Listen, people, that's how we understand what it means to be part of the Jewish nation, the Jewish community. That our children and grandchildren and great-great-great-grandchildren continue on. The Shema is on page number 41.
Baruch Shem Kevod Malachuto Leolam Va'ed. Ve'afta et Adonai Ohecha Beholov Halv Honashaha Uvahol Meodeha Ve'hayu Hadvarim Ha'ela Asher Anahi Mitzavaham Hayam Alaveha Vishinantam Levaneha Vidibar Tabam Bifshiteha Beveteha Uvleteha Vadera Shabaha Uvkumeha Ukshartam Leot Al Yadeha Vayulatotafod Beineneha Uvtavtam Al Mezuzot Beiteha Uvishareha.
We say Shema, which means continue to have strength to keep on going and growing and learning and doing. It's exciting. Thank you. Great-grandchildren on the Bima tonight. Gee, that's fantastic. Fantastic. So look at the bottom of page 42. On the English side, one little line. You know that originally in the ancient days, no longer now, but on the corner of the garment, which was not a prayer shawl, it was a garment, 1 out of every 8 tzitzit was blue. Look at the last line on the left side of the page. A thread of blue. Blue like the sea, blue like the sky, blue like the color of the divine throne. And that's why in today's experience, if you wear a talit, you might see a talit adorned with blue stripes, and that later kind of evolved into the black stripe. And of course, nowadays, talitot are decorated and adorned. Imagine each one of your garments in some way reminding us that you are in the presence of God. That's the purpose of a talit. On page number 44. Umalchuta beratzon kiblu aleihem Moshe u'Miriam u'bnei Yisrael lachanu shira b'simcha rabah v'yamru chulam mi chamocha po'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh Noratilot osefele malchutecha ra'u banecha bokei hayam lifnei Moshe zeli anu v'yamro Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'ne'emar ki fadar Adonai et Yaakov ugalo mi'ad chazak mimenu Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael. And on page 45, you see the bracha entitled the Hashkivenu. Hashkivenu is a prayer calling out for God to journey along with us, to come close to where you and I are in our own lives, and to grant us a sense that we are not alone. And when we go to sleep at night, we're safe because God's presence is dwelling with us. And it's designed, this prayer is designed for you and me to stop and see ourselves as stationary. And God's presence is around each one of us, individually and collectively. That's the Hashkivenu. Looking at the last 4 lines on the English side, the little red arrow. Ensure our going and coming for life and peace, now and forever. May you spread over us your canopy of peace. Baruch atah Adonai, who spreads the canopy of peace over us, over all the people, Israel, and over Jerusalem. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. And also on the song sheet, it's labeled number 4, may we be blessed as we go on our way, guided in peace. A prayer for all of us, not only those here in this building, but those outside this building and the homes that are joining in and everywhere else. May we, as we step forward every day and every night, be seeing ourselves as accompanied by God with peace.
May we be blessed as we go on our way. May we be guided in peace. May we be blessed with health and joy. May this be our blessing. Amen. 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 May this be our blessing. Amen. 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 May this be our blessing. Amen. May we be sheltered by the wings of peace. May we be kept in safety and in love. May grace and compassion find their way to every soul. May this be our blessing. Amen. 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 May this be our blessing. Amen. 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 May this be our blessing. Amen.
Penelope, will you come forward, please? Turning to page 46, the Shamru. Penelope is a great, did I get that right? 3 greats? Great granddaughter of our founding presidents of the synagogue. What? And his wife, of Harrison A. Lubell, founding president of the synagogue. Great granddaughter. And she too is on the bima tonight. And she'll be leading us in the Vishamru, the top of page number 46, which speaks of literally, y'all do Shabbat. Well, we all are. We all are all doing Shabbat. And all those generations through time are still speaking the same language. Vishamru, honey.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asu et ha-Shabbat ledor tambarit olam B'nai Ruvain, B'nai Yisrael, Oti Leolam, Oti Leolam, Oti Leolam, V'shamru B'nai Yisrael, Et HaShabbat, La'asot Et HaShabbat, Ledor Tambarit Olam, Kisheset Yamim, Asa Adonai, Et HaShamayim, Ve'et Ha'aretz, V'shamru B'nai Yisrael, Et HaShabbat, La'asot Et HaShabbat, Ledor Tambarit Olam. Uy, Bayom Hashva'i, Asa U'inafash, Shavat Vinafash, Shavat Vinafash, Vishamru, B'nai Yisrael, Et HaShabbat, La'asot Et HaShabbat, Ledor Tambarit Olam. V'yikra, v'yikra, Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'hirte v'amlech malhute, Be'yehonu mehon, U'v'yehereho Be'Yisrael. Bagala, bagala, U'v'zman karif, V'imru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevorach, Le'olam u'me'olam ha'aya, Yipara, Yipara, V'yishtabach, V'yipar, V'yiraman, V'yanaseh, V'yithadar, V'yithalev, V'yithalal, Shemei Kudash Abrehu, Le'omen kol V'shirata, Tushbahata, V'nehemata, Darimim V'yama, V'imru, Amen.
That is so exciting. Gosh, this is just a thrill. This is a thrill. How many synagogues can have, within the context of a family reunion, within the congregation, great-great-great-grandson and great-great-great-granddaughter come up on the bima to lead part of the service? How many synagogues can experience that? What an absolute thrill. In a moment, the silent Amida, but I want to brag a little bit. So I want you to look at page 47. Those of you at home join in as well. Think about this. On page 47, the first blessing of the Amida. Remember, we say the Amida 3 times a day, every single day of the year. And the first blessing is called the Avot, which means the ancestors. That's how we understand our connections with God, first and foremost. And you might reflect in a few moments as we stand for the silent prayer upon from whence came your opening connections in your own lives to God. Which ancestor or ancestors in some way touched you and spoke of and talked about God, maybe with prayer in the synagogue or a prayer in the home or just a relationship? What does it mean to see yourself as hearing the voices of people, great-great-great-grandparents ago, still in your thoughts and in your head and in your heart? The traditional text is pages 47 through 52, or you might listen to that voice inside from your own ancestors. And then the next step is to see yourself as an ancestor at some point in the future. And which voice, which message will you grant to your descendants as to what does it mean to be connected to God? We rise, a few moments of silent prayer. page 54, the full Kaddish, page 54. So Penelope just did the half Kaddish. The half Kaddish is a small bookmark, and it separates small sections of the service. The full Kaddish is a big bookmark and separates the major parts of the service. And so the service is almost finished. In a minute, it'll be doing the Aleinu, and then the Kiddush with the wine and the bread, and then the concluding portion. So the service is nearly finished, which is why we have the full Kaddish. Yitkara v'yitkara shemei rabo be'alma divrachutei mukmedechutei meru amen yehei shemei rabo mavarach l'olam l'yom me'omaya yitbarach Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitparv v'yisei v'yidar v'yishmei kudusha b'richu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tishberchata v'nechamata damrim v'mavim ro amen tikabel tzlatam v'tashleim ro amen yesh l'seim ro amen oseh shemor v'yaseh shalom l'seim ro amen. Yesterday's date, January 27th, stands out in Jewish history. January 27th is the International Day of Holocaust Remembrance, established by the United Nations some 20-ish, 25-ish years ago. And I remember when it was first established, and I was irritated because I knew that Israel, through an act of the Knesset, had already established Yom HaShoah many years before. The Knesset established Yom HaShoah in the late 50s, so 60 years ago. And then 20-ish plus years later, after Yom HaShoah had been established by the Knesset, the United Nations set forth this date as the International Holocaust Day of Remembrance. And initially I asked, why couldn't the UN accept the statement that had been put forth by the collective enterprise of Jewish life, the nation of Israel, as the day? And over the years, I've calmed down, and I've taken a new thought, and I've reframed my understanding, and I asked myself instead, why would I think that a body of many different nations would view time and history and life in the same way as the Jewish community? And once I came to that understanding, some of my irritation dissipated, and I'm now left with, you might say, different dates of understanding in my life of the greatest loss in humanity the world has ever known. And the nation of Israel and many Jewish organizations and Jewish groups, as you know, mark Yom HaShoah. It's the 27th of Nisan. It's about 2 weeks after the beginning of Passover. And International Holocaust Remembrance Day is January 27th. And the reason that January 27th was chosen is that the Red Army liberated Auschwitz on January 27th. So it's an expression of, you might say, the conscience of the world, seeing the elimination of Auschwitz as a functioning enterprise of hatred that is propelled forward into the future every time we reach January 27th. Yesterday, on January 27th, I stood with a family who was burying a great-grandmother. Her name is Molly Gross. She was a Holocaust survivor by happenstance. And this touches me deeply because this family is part and parcel of the synagogue, almost to some extent the way the Lubell family is part of this synagogue. Because Barry Rips, who's grown up here in this synagogue, is at least a grandson, I can't remember, might be great-grandson of the synagogue as well. And Barry lives in Pensacola, and he married his wonderful wife, Lori, years ago. And they've been members of the synagogue for 30-ish years or so on, and they have children. And Lori, who's my contemporary, buried her mother yesterday. and her name is Molly. And you need to learn a little about Molly. Molly grew up in a small Jewish community of about 60,000 Jewish people in the town of Benjin, which is not too far from Krakow. 60,000 Jewish people. And the large majority of those 60,000 Jews in the bigger city of Benjin were destroyed. A large majority, I don't know exactly how many, but the large majority of the Benjin Jewish community, 60,000, the large majority of them were destroyed by the Nazis. And Molly somehow survived the war and ended up eventually in Canada. Through a very long story, which I'm going to eliminate, she ended up meeting a man named Leon. And Leon lost every one of his family members. He was from a different part of Poland, Pinchev. Molly still had 2 or 3 relatives left. And so Molly and Leon met and married, and they were together for 63 years. And they eventually ended up for about 35 of those years in the enormous Jewish community of Tuscaloosa. Where the heck is that, Alabama? Roll Tide. And that's where Lori Rips, who ended up marrying Barry, went to school and some parts of graduate school. She's now a practicing doctor. So Tuscaloosa, there it is again, the Lubells, the Rips, multiple families within our synagogue. And as we stood at the grave, and we were ushered into this area in Philadelphia yesterday, I was overcome with a sense of emotion. And I don't know these people except this one little small part of this family, but there's this enormous plot in the cemetery. And there must be 70 or 80 graves there. And these are people who survived from different parts of Europe. They left Europe and they came and they all established a community in Philadelphia, which is before they ended up moving to Tuscaloosa. And this enormous community of survivors built a life, establishing children and businesses and contributing to the community in a variety of ways. And they began to establish a cemetery section, you might say. And life continued on, and children and grandchildren came forth. In the case of Molly, one great-grandson, he's 18 months old, but she saw and played with her great-grandson before she died at the age of 94, which was 3 days ago. And as you walk up to this large lot of 70, 80, I'm not sure how many plots, you see a brick wall about yay high, and there are hundreds of names inscribed on this brick wall. And these are the people who did not make it from Europe to Philadelphia. And all those who survived and built lives and established a cemetery whereby they would be living for decades to come and eventually being buried at ripe old ages, remembered those who had perished in Europe and had never come. And so as you walk through this little courtyard, you might say, you see a brick wall with names, hundreds of names inscribed upon this brick wall. And you go past this decorative brick wall. It's a very attractive brick wall. And then you see the graves. And it struck me that as the families were building a new life and setting down roots of generations, they were still holding in their memory those who did not survive Europe, who were lost. And there's this interplay between life and death as presented by these names inscribed on this beautiful, attractive wall in a very well cared for and attractive cemetery. There's that merging of life and death. And the names are entrusted to the people who are now being buried. The names of those people who didn't survive Europe are entrusted to their relatives being buried in this cemetery. And I was overwhelmed by the sense of how names and memories are being entrusted to the next generation. And it was in my head on International Holocaust Remembrance Day, as I was getting ready to think about joining the Lubell family, which holds a warmth in my heart because you have woven the names and the memories of prior generations into the current and future generations. And it occurred to me that I haven't shared a thought with you recently, and so allow me 1 or 2 more minutes. And we speak of when people live and they die, and what do Jews believe when somebody dies? And the answer is, there are many different perspectives, but we can't tell you exactly what happens because nobody has died and come back and said, this is exactly what happens. So there are different perspectives. My personal opinion is that every soul is the most precious soul in all creation. Every soul is created by God and placed into any and every single person to walk the face of this earth since time began and we were walking. And since the soul has been placed in a person, that soul is infinitely precious, and that person is infinitely precious. And it's my personal belief that when somebody dies, that soul goes somehow back to God. I can't prove it. I can't guarantee it. But I believe it. I'm not saying goes to a place, because I think God is far beyond place. God is far beyond all experience. And my brain is limited to this reality that you and I call 3-dimensional time and space, or 4-dimensional time and space. But there's a somehow that's wrapped up in the permanence of memory that's entrusted to the next generation, that in some way reflects what it means for a soul to be perpetuated. And that's what each and every one of us is trying to do every single day, with love, holding on to the soul in a certain way, that elusive quality of a memory that refuses to die. And each and every one of us has that opportunity. So when it comes to remembering our families, to keeping the generations going, see yourself as an active role in history, to hold on to those memories and realize that they are entrusted to you. And in a certain way, you have the obligation and the privilege of entrusting those memories, nicknames of souls, you might say, and your own as well, to the next generation who comes along. May we realize how cherished we are, and how important we are, and how blessed we are. We rise for the Aleinu. In the Siddur, on page number 56, page 56. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kovayei aratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, המשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל ושכינתו זו בגבי מרומים הוא אלוהינו אין עוד et malkeinu efezulato, kakatu b'torato, v'yadata yom v'shevota el levavecha, ki Adonai hua Elohim, Bashamayim mimal, v'al haaretz mitachat enud. Kakatu b'toratecha, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, v'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yihyeh Adonai echad, U'shema echad. And those reciting Kaddish are invited to remain standing at this time. And on this occasion, in accordance with our tradition of marking Yortzites, we mention the following names, remembering with love: Sarah Cohen, Nathan Berger, Mary Schwartz, Louis Maisel, Irene Krasny, Marcus Gupp, Abraham Lubell, Michael Gollum, Bernice Handwerger, Norma Frisch, Annie S. Brook, Herman Lampert, Helena Loeb, Abe Berenti, Harvey Rackwitz, Sidney Zuckerman, Samuel Lampert, Annette Glazer Kay. We remember Molly Gross. Are there any other names to mention tonight? And perhaps those joining in at home have a name to mention aloud in their homes as well. Kaddish, page 58. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabo, amen. Be'olma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chaye chon u'v'yome chon u'v'chaye dechol be Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'meru, amen. Yehei shmei rabo nevarach la'olam ololmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudasha b'rechu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran ba'olma v'meru, amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru, amen. When we say v'imru amen, whoever is reciting the prayer is asking for other people to pay attention to him or to her. That's what v'imru means. V'imru means y'all say amen because somebody is doing the speaking. So these people are doing the speaking, and you're all saying to those who are not speaking, y'all say amen to me. Hear me. The Kaddish is a reminder that when people are in need of prayer to mark mourning or loss, everybody else needs to pay attention to them. Just think about that. We've been doing this for 1,800 years. Paying attention to others who need to be heard. That's a first step in bringing peace. We were seated for a few moments. We'll be making Kiddush in just a couple of minutes. And just a couple of reminders. Of course, tomorrow, Shabbos morning minyan from 10 to about 11:15 or so here on our live stream. And Monday is Tanakh study, and Tuesday is adult Hebrew, and Tuesday is the spirit discussion. All of those are on Zoom. Don't forget, tomorrow night is Havdalah on Zoom. If you have any questions, contact me, and I'll do my best after Shabbat to respond. We're again very excited that the Lubell family is joining us here. It means a great deal to see the family continue to be involved and to grow as the years go by. And the Lubell family is going to be gathering at the cemetery Sunday morning at 8:30, right, for a little gathering? Yes? Yes. Turn to the song sheet. It's the very last song on the song sheet. And then after that, we'll step to the table in the rear, and we have wine and grape juice and challah for Kiddush and for Hamotzi. It's the last song. It's Biyado, which comes from the Adon Olam. And the theme within Biyado Avkid is that I'm laying down soon in the evening, and I have this sense that I'm calm and at peace. Biyado Avkid Ruchi.
As I lay you down to sleep, I pray to God your soul to keep in the shelter of God's wings. May you always be a blessing. May the angels guard your nights. May you wake in radiant light. May you shine as stars above. May you always know love. Biyado avkid ruchi beit ishan v'yaira ve'im ruchi geviati Adonai li velo ira.
And you're invited now to join us at the back table and pour a glass of wine or grape juice and prepare for a piece of challah. We make Kiddush and Hamotzi together in the rear of the sanctuary. And those joining it at home are invited as well to prepare a glass of wine or grape juice and a bit of challah for the Hamotzi. Kiddush is found on page number 55. If at home you do have the Siddur with you. Pardon me, page number 55. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei perei agafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchi lanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit Ki hu yom techila l'mikra'ei kodesh Zecher litziat Mitzrayim Kivanu v'charta V'otanu kidashta Mikol ha'amim V'shabbat kodshecha B'ahava uv'ratzon Hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. It's our practice here at Ahavas Chesed to, I'm just going to wash my hands quickly and then the hamotzi. So help yourselves to a piece of bread on the table, and we'll be making a motzi in just a moment together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech masher kitshanu b'mitzvah v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Thank you for joining in. It's always important. It's always a pleasure to know that you're joining in with us. It means a great deal. May you continue to have a sense of blessing and light and warmth and love in your hearts. I know you're important to me and important to the synagogue. Lead you out until we see each other again. For now, good Shabbos.